Hello and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris. Welcome to The Future is Female. This is the show where we find the extraordinary in every woman. I'm delighted to introduce my guest today, Dr. Jochebed Isaacs, who is the director of Early Autism Project, which is an autism intervention service provider. It marks its 20th anniversary this year, as well as the 10th anniversary of its non-profit, the Hope Project. And joining me on the show to discuss the past 20 years, I have with me Dr. Jochebed. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being with me. So, Jo, if I may. Before we get into the journey of the 20 years, let's start maybe from the beginning. I think many people might be curious to know how you came into the field, what drew you to it, and more importantly, when you decided that this would be your life's work.
Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me on the show. What an honor and what a privilege. And well, basically, I was born into, the home. My dad was a pastor. And so then after that, he actually did a lot of social work, him and my mom. And so I feel like my whole life growing up, I've only known volunteering and service and helping people. So from as early as like 4 years old, we went to Shelter Home, Bethany Home, like visiting all these different nonprofit organizations, Malaysian Care. And so then when it came time to go to study, it was quite natural that I wanted to do a field that would help people. And so I actually went into psychology. And while I was studying, I did a few years in Help University, and then I did the rest of my degree in Curtin in Perth. And what happened there is that most of the psychology students were actually working with children with autism as a part-time job. So I thought, hey, everyone's doing this. I've got a summer. Why don't I go and do it? Melissa, within the first few weeks, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not cut out for this. They didn't like me. I had very little training, and I was trying to work it out. But in a couple of weeks, the child suddenly listened, started to respond to instructions, started to use words as well. And I was like, either I'm a superhero or this program really works. So immediately I called my dad back home in Malaysia, and I'm like, Dad, have you ever heard of this program, Applied Behavior Analysis? It's like delivered one-on-one. And he's like, I don't think they have it in Malaysia. And my father, Dr. Denison, he's like, you have to come back to Malaysia. Malaysia needs professionals, come and serve the country. And so I came back, and I got the opportunity to do the exact same thing. So at the same time as I was coming home, Wisconsin Early Autism Project was moving to Malaysia, and I got to meet them. I did an internship. They offered me a job. It's like, that's like, I still get goosebumps. The timing, the coincidences. So I call it my God story. I feel it's a calling. It's not something I plan to do. In fact, I even told my dad, I'll go into psychology. I'm not going to work in special needs. It's too hard. I'm not going to do that. I want to do counseling and all of that. Marriage, work, parenting maybe. And then the rest is history. So the doors just opened somewhat supernaturally, and just like that, 2006, here I am with a job.
Amazing. And it's been 20 years.
And 20 years, absolutely.
So before we get into how quickly the time has passed, your story it's remarkable. It really resonates with me. But also, I do wonder how different your story is to other people. The people that I've spoken to who work within this field often have a personal connection to autism, have a family member who is on the spectrum, or a child, and they feel like they need to...
A burden?
They feel like they need to create some of the ecosystem, give back and maybe share some of the experiences. Do you ever feel that, the need to challenge the assumption that advocacy must be driven by some kind of personal connection or lived experience?
I mean, I really respect people who have done that, because so many of our wonderful organizations were started by parents. And in the initial years, many asked me, do you have a sibling? What got you into the field? And I used to say, and I say the same thing even this year, is that I don't feel that you need to have a relative to be passionate about a cause. For us as a family, we think of it as it could be us. And there are so many amazing causes, and for me, it just happened to be that the doors opened for me to be involved in autism, and I feel like it doesn't require me to have a relative. And back 20 years ago, I didn't have a single friend or a single relative, but 20 years later, there are, because of the numbers increasing, everywhere I go, I have neighbors who have autism, I have people in my church, family members. But 20 years ago, I didn't.
Can we talk a little bit about that? Why has there been an increase in numbers? I mean, I'm wondering how we as the public should should understand
Yeah.
this? What do you think?
So there's a few perspectives on this, or a few theories. One is definitely that there's a greater awareness, and so people so even comparing 20 years ago and now, at that time, children that would come to us for services would be already coming to a standard 1. So that means they're like already at the 7-year-old age, they can't get into school, and then they're like, oh dear, can I get help? Now children are coming to us as early as 20 months. Some even I've got the son who has autism, the sibling is coming at 18 months. So clearly the awareness of early identification and early intervention has definitely increased. But at the same time, genetics have changed so much. The environmental causes, the foods we eat, the screen times, there's definitely an influence where I don't feel it is just that there's greater awareness, but I think that the numbers have genuinely risen. Could be linked to so much. I mean, America is constantly doing so much of research.
Yeah, so from when you first started till now, how much has the literature around autism increased? Has there been a lot more data? Do we know more about the causes, the symptoms, the signs?
I think in the US, they definitely are investing so much into research. It still points back to environmental, biological, genetic related. There isn't a very specific point, but I think they keep trying to research and trying to find. But in terms of Malaysian data, we're still, I think, getting there. We still need a bit more.
We still need more.
Yeah, still a bit, definitely need that. But in terms of the prevalence, the numbers have jumped hugely based on the US. So I feel like 20 years ago, maybe it was it started off with 1 in 400 years ago, decades ago. And then 20 years ago, it was 1 in 150. And then it became 1 in 38, 1 in 36. Wow. So that means every classroom, there's a child with autism,
Wow, okay.
So I mean, if you look at the numbers based on that, right? Yeah, based in the US. And I wonder whether, maybe generally across the world, they're saying about 1 in 100. So there's different stats, but clearly the numbers have increased.
Right. So how do we make sense of that? When you talk about there's awareness now around the need for early diagnosis, early interventions, what are some of the earliest signs that parents tend to miss?
I think it's the expectation of milestones. So one of the PSAs, public service announcements, we try to make is the minute you have a baby to actually download, there's a free app by CDC on developmental milestones.
Right.
So parents, new parents especially, because it's hard to gauge, right? Sometimes, my own dad, bless him, he's like, Joe, I only spoke at 6 years old. And I'm like, Dad, you can't say that anymore. Because now, 6 years old, kids start babbling at a few months old already. By a year, they're already starting to say words. By 18 months, they're supposed to have at least 10 meaningful words. Some even have 50, 100 words by 18 months to 2 years old. So imagine a typical Malaysian may not really expect that. We might be expecting them to talk fluently, maybe closer to 3, 4. So that's where, if we're not monitoring closely developmental milestones. And thankfully, I believe lots of pediatricians are also starting to do this. Okay. But I found in my own experience, initially it was very much weight, height, and head circumference. But we had a very good pediatrician who would kind of constantly say hi and look at the eye contact, look at the interaction. So definitely any delay in speech, any delay in eye contact, or the child not having that reciprocal reciprocal action and relationship and eye contact is very important. And any lack of nonverbal communication, lack of pointing, all those actually do emerge pretty early.
Joe, can I ask you, are there gender differences? Are there unique challenges where girls may it'd be harder to pick up, to tell from girls from boys?
Yeah, there's some research on that maybe some girls may seem to not present their symptoms, but typically, I mean, from my professional experience, I feel that if it was a boy or girl, regardless, the symptoms are quite clear, and if we follow those protocols, they should be quite clearly identified. But in terms of statistics or ratios, it used to be that 4 boys to 1 girl or 4 male to 1 female in terms of the autism numbers, and now it's 3 to 1, which means that there's an increasing number of girls as well.
So once a parent has identified some of the maybe their child has not hit developmental milestones, why is it important that they seek out professional diagnosis or interventions? Why is it important to do it as early as possible?
Yeah, it's like that is like so crucial because there's a number of reasons. One is a child's brain is so soft and malleable, so teachable. I mean, it's the very reason if we want a World Cup star, go for soccer earlier, right? You're starting all these like language,
so early,
everything you start early, and then once they pass a certain age, too late already. So it's actually the same reason your brain is like soft and malleable. But another big reason which we're really trying to raise awareness on is that a child may be physically or chronologically a certain age, like 1 year old, 2 years old, 3 years old, but developmentally, they need to be at that same age to be on par. But if they are behind, meaning to say they are delayed, then this gap is increasing. Meaning to say that physically, if they are 3 years old, but developmentally, they're like a 1 year old, that's a 2-year gap. Yeah. By the time they turn 4, this gap has increased to 3 years. By the time they turn 5, it's increased to 4 years. So sometimes, and this is one of the misconceptions I feel parents may not understand, is when they go, it's okay, as long as they go to school, I'm okay if they go later. But what parents don't understand is that this gap is widening. Even if they go to school later, they may not be able to catch up or close the gap. Because once the gap becomes 4 years, 5 years, a child will have to jump, in 12 months of learning, they have to jump 2 years or 3 years of skills because every year you turn a year older, that gap is widening. So that's the part where that's where the criticalness of going for early intervention, but the right early intervention.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've met, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry.
So much I can just talk about.
Speaking about the right intervention, you mentioned earlier the applied behavioral analysis. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so there are so many types of treatments out there, many different expertise and all sorts of options. But the research keeps showing us the steady increments still in this ABA program, which is funded in the US by many states because of its effectiveness. So it starts as early as 18 months, 2 years old. It is individualized. So every child, if you were in a program, an ABA program, will receive an individualized plan with one-to-one therapy in an intensive way. So we're talking about 32 hours a week of one-to-one therapy. So this is like 6 hours a day. It's like going to work. So for some parents, again, this is another area where it can be difficult for some parents because they're like, oh my gosh, that's so much time. But if we think of it logically, so I feel I guess my passion is explaining it in a common sense way. And if I ever had to go through this, I would still recommend the same things even for myself or my family or anyone close to me, because in a day, there's 24 hours. Assuming a child sleeps 12 hours, they have 12 hours of awake time. Times by 7, that's 84. Sorry, I'll get a bit technical. 84 hours a week. Now, even if they did 1 hour of speech therapy with the best speech therapist, it's like a drop in the ocean. So if the child is spending 82 hours, 80 hours flapping their hands, not engaging, not talking, that behavior is actually getting stronger. So whatever behavior the child is practicing more and more gets more and more established. Hence why the need for an intensive program. But why do kids not get this? You can imagine, Melisa, individualized, one-to-one, intensive, you can hear dollar signs, dollar signs, dollar signs.
That's exactly what I wanted to ask you. I mean, maybe walk us through some of the lived realities of that many families go through, right? So if a family suspects that their child is on the spectrum, what would be the biggest obstacles that they have to face? I'm sure money is one of them.
Yeah, I would say resources are the top of the range, because it's either resources financially or if they are in a more rural part of Malaysia, then it's accessibility.
Okay.
So that's actually why, I mean, that's really what keeps us going as a company, because even though we provide these high quality programs, our hearts are burdened by the fact that every week we get phone calls from families that we can't help. And even at our center in Bangsa, we sometimes have Grab drivers that come to drop food off, and they're like, how much, if I have 300 ringgit, can you help my child? And so you're burdened by the fact that we've got quality, but we have yet accessibility. So that's why we started our non-profit, The Hope Project, 10 years ago.
Tell me about the Hope Project.
I'm very passionate about that. I think this is where I feel I'm much more driven for, charitable work. And I think that's where so rewind the story. Many, many years ago, I have the option of starting a nonprofit straight away or joining this company, EAP. And where I felt as a young 20-something-year-old is I felt like if I join a nonprofit straight away, I'll be focused on raising funds all the time. I won't be able to like get the expertise, get the quality, know how to do it. And so I joined EAP and we learned everything. Now we grew from 2 staff to like 90.
Yeah, you needed to build yourself first,
Yeah,
right? Yes.
capacity-wise, knowledge-wise, and our management team has over 100 years of clinical experience. So now any child on the spectrum, any age, we are very confident in how, so we have the intellectual knowledge. Now we're in a position to help nonprofit and to help nonprofit organizations and so on. So we started the Hope Project. The vision of the Hope Project is to make world-class services accessible to all. And we do it through 3 ways. Very easy to remember, CSR, campaigns, services, and resources. So our campaigns, we do Kindness Starts With Me campaigns in school. It's an anti-bullying campaign talking to thousands of kids to try to explain to them how they can help people with differences, not bully them. We do social media campaigns, we have videos, and we just raise awareness, partnering with organizations and so on. In terms of services, we have supported non-profit centers. So we go to their center and we train them and we try and upskill their teachers. And that's impacted about 1,600 children outside of EAP's impact. And then, of course, we're very proud of our resources because years ago, I was talking to my husband, I was like, I wish I could replicate like myself because everywhere I go, I have to share strategies. I can't, it's not enough. And I was like, I think we got to make videos. 2019, I have this idea. It comes to me, autism at home. Make these videos, autism at home. We all know what happens in 2020, but we didn't know in 2019.
Right.
We start 2020 making these videos. We made 5 starter kit series. March 2020, the world goes into lockdown, Malaysia especially. We forget about releasing the video one by one. We're like, take it all.
Take it all,
yeah,
yeah.
we put it all online and people started watching it and using it. And what warms my heart so much is to hear parents, like we got an email from someone in England saying that I just taught my son how to speak from your videos, and another one in Miri, I just taught my son how to speak 60 words from your videos. So that's where I feel this is how we can break this whole thing with resources and lack of accessibility, is if we empower parents to today. So my dream is that today, if you had some concerns about your child, you can go online and you can find the solutions right now to start straight away. Do something.
Parents
yeah,
can do
straight
it
away.
themselves.
Yeah. It's just like how we as moms have to learn how to breastfeed. We learn how to take care of, like we have to do it ourselves. We can teach our kids. And imagine if every parent was empowered with the strategies to teach their child how to speak, how to communicate, how to cooperate. So I could go on and on.
That's fantastic. So wonderful to empower parents, but
Yeah.
can we talk about wider society and kind of policy, right? So when we think about education and inclusion and the way society accepts and is aware, and
Yeah.
we talk about an autism inclusive society, what does that look like? What does that mean? From someone working within,
Yeah.
when you see about how things can change,
Yeah.
what would you like to change?
Yeah, I think we have something called the 4 A's, and we wish, I suppose, A is for awareness, that if everyone understood about autism, just you don't need to become an expert, just the basics.
Understanding,
yeah.
yes.
So if you saw a child crying or having a meltdown, you could think, oh, maybe it's autism, and then you kind of give that family
Some space, yeah.
exactly. And then secondly would be to make some be willing to be willing to accept them. So awareness, acceptance meaning like, okay, I'm happy for them to come to my birthday party. I'm happy for them to be in my school. I'm happy to be around them, not just me and my friends. I'm willing to include them. But to accept them, I might have to make some accommodations. So imagine if like every cinema, every mall, every restaurant had a little bit of accommodations for people with neurodiversity, right? And then lastly, you become an advocate. So an advocate means, and we've seen this, Melissa, in schools sometimes where the children, other students will stand up for a child with special needs or additional needs. They'll say, you know, I watched this with my own eyes, some boys bullying one of our kids years ago, saying, you're crazy, you're this, or you're lying, you did it. And she was like 5 years old. She banged her, I can't remember her name, bless her. She must be like a young adult now, or teenager. She banged her hand on the table and said, stop it, all of you. He did not do it, and I'm going to report you to the teacher. And I was like,
That warms my
little
heart.
girl,
yeah.
you know, who
What a
just
queen.
stood up. Yeah, she's like an advocate for a boy who just was like, intimidated by a gang of boys bullying him. Everyone just backed down straight away. She's like, you do that one more time, I'm going to tell the teacher.
You must have
And imagine-
many stories like this
Yes.
from the 20 years that
Yeah.
you've been in this. What has stayed with you? You talked about some of the parents writing to you and telling you. Has there been anything that's really stayed with you that's kind of kept that fire going?
Yeah, I mean, so many. Like,
I'm
we could be here for
sure,
hours.
I'm
We could be here
sure.
for hours. But I think they always talk about, you know, the first few children you work with. And so I think when I went to the US, there was this family with a little Egyptian son. And an Egyptian family, sorry. And he had an afro this big. And he was quite, you know, like difficult to manage and all of that. And I was the intern trying to help and learn. Anyway, long story short, by the time it came to the end of my internship, he was able to sit still. He couldn't have a haircut. That's why he had an afro. He was able to sit still in the barber for 20 minutes and get his hair cut properly. And that's just from the teaching him of what was expected, using social stories, practicing. And so you just see his mom crying, him just sitting there like happy that his hair is being cut, me crying, and just like the fact that you changed their life. And that's like hair cutting, but we've got things like birthday parties. Parents saying this is the first birthday party we've ever had. We could never have a birthday party because every time we sing happy birthday, my child has a meltdown. They don't know how to cope with that. Or we had a family move from Maldives and was here in Malaysia, and we got to work with their son, and the son would be so rude. It's very high functioning, just so rude, very difficult to manage. The mum could not manage him. And by the time he finished the program and went back to Maldives, he was telling the mum, hey, what you just did, that was a bit yellow light, you know, that was not, because we use a
because
traffic
the
light
traffic
system.
light system, that's
that was not green. How you spoke to me, that was yellow or red.
Oh,
so
that's
him from,
amazing.
so just the changes. And that's why celebration is something that we do so often. We want to celebrate everything that our kids do. And no matter how significant, like catching up. So we see things like IQ, becoming typical IQ, going to mainstream schools, speaking fluently. Those are the top three. But even for those who can't achieve those three, everything else, having as meaningful a life as possible. So what we really hope for is that every child we get to work with can achieve their best potential. And that looks different.
Absolutely,
for
every
single
child. Yeah. You know, at the beginning of our conversation, you mentioned that you never thought this would be your field of work, your
Yes.
line of work, because you said it was too hard
Yeah.
to be working in special needs. At what point did that change? And you know, looking back now to your younger self
Yeah.
20 years ago,
Yeah.
did you want to tell her something about it being not too hard?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, yeah, there's this trend, right? What would you say?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's like that it's not that hard, it's true. Like, I think sometimes we magnify the issue, and I think especially if you're quite, you know, like responsible and you want to do things right. So
And
then when something,
empathetic,
and
right?
empathetic at the
Yes,
same time.
yeah.
So when something happens wrong, you're like, oh man, like everything's falling apart. But actually you realize, hey, no, you're going to wake up tomorrow, you're going to go back to work, and it's going to be okay. And I think to actually focus on the big picture of what you actually get to do versus it's the fight to focus. Like, you could be focusing on the problems, or you could be focusing on the future and the impact and the change that you can bring. And so it definitely it is hard. Any working woman or man, there's nothing easy in life. Nothing easy.
Choose your heart.
Yeah, correct.
Choose your heart.
Yeah, exactly.
So, in the time that we have left, can I ask you, what message would you have to our parents at home who may be wondering whether they too are missing any signs? Would you mind telling our parents? To that camera.
Well, hi parents, everyone all across Malaysia. We just want to say we honor each and every one of you. And as a parent myself as well now, I know that it's challenging when we see any areas of challenge or weakness, and it's so difficult to see our children go through that. But just like when our child has any kind of flu or any kind of coughs, cold symptoms, we want to straight away go to the doctor. We would highly encourage you, if you see your child missing any of the milestones, this is not about a label, it's not about judgment, it's not about the stigma, but it's about getting the best help, the quickest way and the best way possible, so that you can help your child, give them the tools that they need, give them the strategies that they need to achieve their best potential. And of course, to all parents out there, we always advise, like the oxygen mask on the aeroplane analogy, always put the mask on yourself first. Make sure you take care of yourself, take care of your marriage, take care of your other children as well. And we just want to say that we wish you the very best, and we're here to help.
Jo, that was lovely. Thank you so
Thank
much for being on the
you.
show, sharing some of your passion with us. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
That's all the time we have for you on this episode of The Future is Female. I'm Melisa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching, and good night.